Welcome to the Live Courageously podcast show number 94. I'm your host, John Duffy, and Live Courageously has been the conscious theme of my life for the last 4 years since the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. Only 10% of podcast shows create 100 podcast shows before they go out of business. So I'm only 6 away from hitting that milestone. So stay tuned, and I hope you join me in spreading the mission of living courageously, and subscribe to my YouTube channel by the same name, and share the show to support the mission. Today's show is with a courageous and creative and talented friend. We go back a way. Ben Ramsey is a veteran screenwriter, director, and producer of over 3 decades of experience in Hollywood. He made his mark scripting action hits like The Big Hit and Dragon Ball Evolution, and he's worked on as an A-list script doctor for nearly 20 years, adopting projects for major studios, including Marvel, Paramount, and Sony. As a director, Ramsey is known for the cult classic Love and a Bullet, and the underground favorite, and my favorite that I worked on, Blood and Bone, earning him a reputation for sleek, kinetic storytelling with emotional depth. Ramsey recently wrote, directed, and produced the award-winning sci-fi short film Interface, a bold fusion of cyberpunk aesthetics and social commentary, and he is currently a pioneering voice in the AI filmmaking movement, having just completed episode 3 of The Gauntlet, a web series spin-off of Interface. Blending traditional craft with cutting-edge generative tools, Ramsey is pushing the boundaries of what's possible in independent science fiction storytelling. Greetings, brother. Welcome to Live Courageously, man. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, JD. Man, it's been a while, man, since Blood and Bone. I can't think of the last time we met post Blood and Bone. I think we met over about one project some time ago.
I thought we did too. Yeah, man. But it's, I usually ask people how did we connect? And well, obviously we connected on your movie Blood and Bone, which was, like you said, was a cult classic. Michael Jai White, all these MMA fighters. And we filmed it here in downtown LA and around LA. It was a great time, man.
Yeah, it sure was, man. It continues to be a cult classic because, almost not a day goes by where I don't hear from somebody, saying, when's Blood and Bone 2 coming out? When's Blood and Bone?
Well,
like, man,
I'm going to ask you that too. When's Blood and Bone 2 coming out?
That's a Mike White question. You got to talk to Mike about that.
I ran into him at one of a screening that he did for one of his movies, and I think I might have asked him that too. It would be a real fun reunion if there was a way to pull that off. I'm sure.
Hey, I'd do it in a second. So
yeah,
all you got to do is say when. I'll be there.
Right. Let's raise the money and let's do it. Hey, the second question I usually ask people is, because the show is Live Courageously, what does that mean to you? Because you've kind of had a very courageous life and a very adventurous life and all the things you've done creatively. So what does that mean to you to live courageously?
Well, living courageously to me means living without fear. It means doing what you're supposed to do, what you've been put on this earth to do. And not fearing what people will say about you, what people think about you, what the powers that be, have to say about what you're doing. You just do it, and whatever the consequences are, those are the consequences, because at the end of the day, you still have to, live with yourself, And, I've kind of like had that, my career in Hollywood is that, there were times, when people say, man, you had all these projects and stuff. Why aren't you bigger than you are? And it was just, it was because, there were just certain things that, I didn't want to do. I refused to do in terms of the stories that I wanted to tell and the way I wanted to present myself. It was like, I can't do that. You gotta pass that on to somebody else. And for a while you could be hot. You can be, the hottest guy in town. And it could turn over just like that,
Yeah, it does. Well, you've gone on an adventure. You come out of Pittsburgh, if I'm correct, right? And
Yes.
what took you? How did you get from Pittsburgh to Hollywood to the entertainment industry? How and why? Why did you go on that journey as opposed to maybe a different journey?
Well, it's kind of a long story, but I could trace it back to going to the movies. But first of all, my father was a television producer
Ah,
in Pittsburgh, and I was a kid, and he used to drag me and my brother along on shoots and things he did. He had a production company where he was, making films, making short films. He moved from television to being independent, working with the studios to be independent. And at the time, I was a kid. That didn't really mean much to me at the time,
sure.
but I see later on how, I kind of like followed the same course. But what it was, because most of the time my father was, we're going to go out and shoot. We're going to do something. I'd be like, oh, man. I'd be like, I just want to go have fun. But it was during the Kung Fu movie era. Big fan of Kung Fu movies. And I love Kung Fu movies and action movies. And one day there was an action movie I wanted to see called The Killer Elite with James Caan.
Huh.
And it was on a double bill with a movie called Taxi Driver. I knew nothing about Taxi Driver. I went in and I watched that double feature. And when I walked out of the theater, Taxi Driver had burned itself into my brain. I was like, wow. It was all of a sudden, I was like, I got it. And one scene in particular, if I ever meet Martin Scorsese, I'm going to tell him about that scene. As I'm watching the movie, and the main character, Travis Bickle, the deranged taxi driver, is sitting in this restaurant with all his fellow taxi drivers, and they're all talking, about just nothing, just babble, and he's just staring at a glass of Alka-Seltzer bubbling in a glass, and the camera does this overhead shot, and it just slowly pushes in on the Alka-Seltzer. And the sound of the bubbling gets louder and louder, and the sound of all the talking gets lower and lower. And at that point, it was like, I get it. I got it. I got what that. And all of a sudden, film language started, becoming embedded in my brain. Every movie that I would go, I would look at film language, I would look at the shots. I would look at, and I would think about the psychological impact of all those shots, all those scenes, and that was what did it for me. I was hooked ever since. That was it. I knew what I wanted to do with my life.
And knowing that when you were watching it, did you know you wanted to do it all? Like you wanted to write, you wanted to direct, or were you more focused, or did it was just you wanted to be in this entertainment industry as a creator? What was it?
I wanted to direct. I wanted to be Martin Scorsese.
Okay.
That was what I did from that point. Before, I never cared about who directed movies.
Interesting.
I didn't even know who Robert De Niro was at that time. But
and so when you got to LA, how old were you, and how did you get started? Obviously, that's not an easy transition coming from Pittsburgh. You just show up in LA, and what do you do?
Well, it was twofold. There were two trips to LA. First was right out of high school. I came out to LA to attend Columbia College,
Okay.
film and television. Not Columbia University, but Columbia College.
Columbia College. Yeah, I taught a little a session there.
Yeah, and so I came out, to attend Columbia College, and I attended for all of about 6 months before just living in LA on my own, fresh out of high school, being young and dumb. Just the weight of it all started to bear down on me. And I found myself, now I'm just trying to survive. I'm spending more time. my public, my college tuition, kind of got messed up, and I didn't get what I needed to survive. I was on my own. I didn't know anybody, and what happened was I just kind of got caught up in living,
Okay.
and next thing you know, I'm like kind of like living on the streets in LA, and it was kind of rough,
Even back then, it was rough. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, yeah. So I wound up hooking up with a roommate. I got a roommate, and we both worked at the Broadway department store downtown as janitors, janitors and maintenance guys. And this dude was a little bit shady, and I fell into his shady practices. So, we used to go in there, and we would steal items and stuff, throw them in a garbage bin, and then go backstage and then take all our pilfered goods, and head out to the jungle and Watts, and sell them, So we had a little side hustle.
Huh.
But what happened with hanging out with that guy is I started getting deeper and deeper into, that kind of, criminal lifestyle. And I was a hardcore criminal. I was just,
Yeah, small time.
yeah, small time criminal. But the circles that I started finding myself in were like, okay,
Not good.
this is not what I came out here to do. This was not how I was raised. Even though I grew up in a tough neighborhood back in Pittsburgh in Homewood, if you know anything about Pittsburgh, Homewood, Brushland, that was the hood. I was always raised not to run with that crowd, all my friends, everything. They were all about something. My father, tried to, teach us to, be right. So after that, I was like, okay, I got to get out of here. I got to do something. And then I wound up joining the Navy.
Okay.
So I was in the Navy, and I was supposed to be in for 6 years. And actually, I only did about 2.5
Okay.
before the Navy were like, dude. I was just, it was part of that thing. I questioned authority too much. I was, too much of a questioner of authority.
You weren't a follower, and I can speak to that. Seeing your stuff on Facebook is, you're always somebody, and I think that's a good trait, that you just question things. You just don't follow, and you're willing to express yourself, like you said earlier, about living courageously. You have your opinion and you're willing to express it. You're not like going to go along with everybody because everybody else is going along.
Yeah. No, I just, only time it's not, I'm not against going with the crowd, if the crowd is going in the right direction.
Right.
But, if I see the crowd headed down, the wrong time, so I'm like, I'm not going with that crowd. Yeah. And so, that was it. So after the Navy, I came back home with my tail between my legs. It was like, hey, man, where's the movies? I thought you was going to go out to be a big movie star. And I spent, a few years and back home figuring out what I was going to do until I discovered public access TV.
Okay.
And me and my good friend who just passed a few years ago, Mike McCants, everybody knows McCants. We met through public access TV, and we were just, Cants was making kung fu movies over on the north side. I was in Homewood. I was making music videos and short films, and and somewhere along the line, if you were to be in Pittsburgh during that time, this was the early to mid '80s, and you asked about the Black filmmaking community in Pittsburgh, it was me and Cants. That was it.
You were
it. Yeah, we were it. Yeah. So eventually, I got to be known as a filmmaker, and and then Hollywood moved into Pittsburgh, and they started shooting films there, and and I started working on films, as production assistant, and working with art departments and things like that. And before I knew it, I'm like, hey, I'm I don't have to go back to Hollywood. Hollywood came to my hometown. And, I worked on Silence of the Lambs. I was a production assistant on that. And, a few other movies. And I started meeting, like people, the director, the stars and everything. And I said, hey, I'm a filmmaker. Can I show you some of my stuff? And eventually it was Forrest Whitaker who told me, he said, man, I tell you what you need to do. You need to get out of this town, come out to LA,
Huh.
or you're not going to go anywhere in this town, And my Uncle Don, I mention him in every film I do. And in the thanks, there's always a thanks to Uncle Don.
Huh.
Uncle Don said, like, yeah, man, what the hell are you doing here, man? Get out of here, So Uncle Don, gave me about $15K. He was like, here, man,
Wow.
take
Which is
this
a lot
money.
of money back then.
Yeah. Get out, go get back to Hollywood and do what you're supposed to do. And the second time around, I came and I started working. I worked at the Blockbuster Video up on Sunset. God, I forget what's the cross street. Well, anyway, it was like, there was Blockbuster, and a lot of the celebrities used to come from. It was because it was right near the hills and everything.
Right.
And next thing I met this one woman who, we started talking about, what she was renting. Her name was Jeannie Lucinian. And Jeannie said, well, I work for Roger Corman's company,
Wow.
so, if you need some work, you don't want to do this, come down and you could work with me in the art department. So that led to, so I started working on the art department down at Corman Studio. And then, at that same time, I started working on, writing scripts of my own. And then my roommate, Lynette, her boyfriend, Larry Robinson, was looking for a script that he could pitch to Notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls,
Uh-huh.
And so I wrote him a script, he paid me for it, he paid me a couple grand. I was like, wow,
You hit
$2,000
the big time, brother.
Yeah. And I wrote this script, gave it to Larry, and next thing you know, it started doing the pre-internet version of going viral all over town. It was like the must-read script all over Hollywood.
Wow.
And before I knew it, I started getting phone calls from every big agency, every big producer, it was crazy. That was like the craziest time of my life. Everything just opened up. I was getting calls from William Morris, from CAA, from ICM. These executives would take me for lunch meetings in Beverly Hills. Here I'm damn near broke. I'm like working down at Corman Studio doing set dress, doing Swing Gang, and and I'm next thing you know, I'm eating in these 5-star restaurants with these top producers, and first few times I was like, I was too nervous to eat, and this is the funny, because what I would do back then is I would go down to the dollar store and I would buy like several boxes of spaghetti and several jars of, and I haven't seen it since. I don't know if it's still around, but it was called Frank Sinatra spaghetti sauce. Wow. And I would get this Frank Sinatra spaghetti sauce, and I'd make a big pot of that, and that's what I would eat, all week. It was cheap. But next thing you know, I'd be at a 5-star restaurant, too nervous to eat, and I'd say, order what you want, And then I'd go home and I'd be like, stomach's rattling. And I'd pull out that pot of that damn Frank Sinatra spaghetti. And I was like, oh man. So after that, next time I'd go to those meetings, it was just, I would be like, Yep. We really like it. Yeah, I'm glad you like it. You gonna
Yeah,
finish
you learned
that?
to take advantage of that one, man.
Yeah. You say, hey, make this to go,
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So anyway, the rest was oh, that's right. I met my manager, producer, Warren Zide at Zide Perry Films. Those are the guys that did the American Pie Final Destination. And their first big hit, my movie, The Big Hit.
The Big Hit.
And
So that was the
yeah,
first big hit screenwriting wise for you.
yeah. And that came like a whirlwind. Warren told me, and I tell him I never forget him for this, and I said, whatever, you do, I'm always gonna be loyal. Warren said, I told him, I was like, I gotta work, I gotta, pay the bills. He was like, you know what? I'm gonna pay your rent and pay all your bills for the
Wow.
month, but you gotta write a screenplay for me.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I did it. And I wrote The Big Hit. Wrote it. There was a bidding war for it. They were throwing all kind of money at, all the top actors and were vying to, at one point it was going to be a Martin Lawrence movie and a few others, and then till he eventually landed with Mark Wahlberg. And within a year of writing it, it was in production.
Wow.
I kid you not. Everybody was like saying this never happened.
No, it
never
doesn't.
happened. And it hasn't happened since.
I know, ain't that the truth, right?
And so after that, the rest of it, as they say, was history. So I enjoyed a few years as the hot new writer on town. He used to Black Tarantino. It was about the same time Tarantino was blowing up.
And also he worked in blockbusters too, right? Or one of
the yeah. He worked at a video store too. So
yeah,
that was that
yeah.
So anyway, that was I did so much work. I was doing so it was just crazy. It was a whirlwind.
And was that for that period of time? It was mostly writing, script doctoring, doing all that. Was that your focus at that period of your life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was, it wasn't my focus because I always wanted to direct, but that's what was just being thrown at me,
right?
And each project was, was higher, was more money,
Sure.
So eventually,
how did you pivot? How did you go from there to finally going to your first movie directing? How did you make that happen? And what was that movie? And tell us a little bit about that.
Well, that was like, I was, making, lots of money, making lots of money at that particular time. So I went to my accountant and I asked him, I said, how much do you think I can just blow? I could just throw away. If I put this money in and it disappeared and I never saw it again, how much do you think, I could spare? And he said, about 500K. I was like, okay.
You did okay up until that point, man.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, so I said, okay, well, I'm going to take that 500K, and I made Love in a Bullet.
Okay.
With me and my partner, Cance, my buddy Cance from Pittsburgh, because after I blew up, we had made a promise while we were back in Pittsburgh shooting little films in the public. Say, hey, man, whoever makes it first, man, throw me a line. I was like, all right, cool. So, I canceled. I was like, come on, man. I said, you ready? He was like, yeah, man. I said, pack up. You're moving, moving to Hollywood. So he loaded up the truck and he moved to Beverly. So, and so me and him had conceived of this idea, this Hitman movie. It was actually supposed to be a trilogy of Hitman movies. And, it was called The Contract. And then later it was called Love in a Bullet. We took that script, put the money up, we cast it, we, got Tretch from Naughty by Nature, the rapper, to star in it, and we made it,
Loving a Bullet. That's the picture of it.
Yeah. So that was my first thing. And so for about a couple years, I was sitting on the world's most expensive home movie.
Wow.
Uh,
And you
until
filmed it in LA?
Yeah, filmed in LA, multiple locations. We had action scenes, and it was very ambitious for the budget. But we managed to pull it off. This is why Larry, this is why I appreciate you or what you did with Blood and Bone,
Well,
because
here's some of the pictures. This is the movie. That's the poster. Here's another poster of it. And then here is a picture with the three of us, me, you, and Michael Jai, man.
yeah, man. I was
So,
like, man, I learned to appreciate, man. I really appreciate what you did on that movie, because there was so much drama going on in the background that I had no idea what was going on, and you managed to keep it away from me.
yeah, I know. There was definitely way too much drama, man. Way too
Yeah,
much damn drama.
yeah. So, and I was like, on Love and the Bullet, it was it was drama, from the money people. Only I'm the money people.
Right.
So every lunch, while everybody would eat lunch, I'd have to team up with all the production heads into a crisis intervention meeting. Every lunch was crisis intervention for me on that movie. So
Well, I'm looking back and I'm trying to remember. I remember we had a meeting in Santa Monica with the producer at the time for the movie when it first started up. But I don't know how I ended up in the mix, with you. I don't remember who connected us. I can't remember that. But I remember once we got that meeting and the meeting went good, we started going down that path together. And it was like, yeah, man, this is going to be cool. Really cool project. So.
yeah. Well, I think it was just I don't know, if it was needed, was responsible for, but I just vibe. I was like, yeah, I like this guy's vibe. I like his energy. You know.
Well,
Uh,
vice versa, man. It was, I knew you knew what you wanted, and and the fun thing about it was, you love martial arts. I grew up for 2 years doing kung fu as well. So here was this movie that was so creative, and with all these mixed martial art people, and I'm trying to remember some of the names of some. You remember the names, but Gina Carano was in it.
yeah, that was her first movie. Yeah,
Our
Gina
first
Carano.
movie, we were filming that downtown with all these ex-gang members and
I
still gang
know.
members. It was a crazy shoot, man.
Yeah, I know. Gina, Kimbo Slice. It was his
Kimbo
first
Slice.
movie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Kimbo. God, there was a lot of top luminaries that only martial arts knew. People in the martial arts knew, were doing cameos and stuff. We even, got Bob Wall from Enter the Dragon to come in a way, kind of reprise his role of O'Hara.
And then there was
Uh,
the British actor who unfortunately died recently on a hiking thing. I forget his name.
yeah, yeah. Julian Sand.
Yeah,
Yeah, Julian Sands,
he
man.
played a great role in the movie. He was kind of like the kingpin boss, mob guy, and
Yeah.
and I remember where we.
International arms dealer.
Exactly. I remember where we filmed that up on this. I guess it was a nunnery originally up on the hill, and it was like, hey, man, that was a very cool day and a very cool scene. But the whole
Yeah.
thing was cool. I mean, it was challenging. There was so many challenges for you as a director. There was challenges behind the scenes for us, me in production. But it was a great group of people, and overall, it was like when it was over, I was like, man, that was such a cool experience. That was one of the good ones.
Yeah, man, it sure was, man. I think we had some problems when we were shooting at the nunnery, that the neighbors were, trying to get us shut down or something like
Well,
that.
yeah, that's a funny behind the scenes story. So,
Mm.
yeah, because trucks had to drive down the street and then drive up to the nunnery. So, really, there was no real creating any problems for the neighbors. But there was one neighbor who was a complainer, right? So, she
Mhm.
called the film commission, and the film commission was going to shut it down. And then I called the producer, and I'm blanking on his name right now, but I called the producer, and the producer was friends with Arnold Schwarzenegger at the time, who was governor. So
Mhm.
he called Arnold. Arnold called the film commission. Of course, that went away instantly. So that was that one. But
I had no idea. Now I can throw that. Now I got another thing to throw in the story and stuff. Now I can throw Arnold Schwarzenegger in the Blood and Bone story.
The other great story, and I'd love to share if you don't mind, is when we were shooting this scene with Gina Carano and all those people down with all the gang people. There was an incident behind the scenes, and there was this one extra who was from a Hispanic gang, and there was an actor who used to be in a different gang, and so they started beefing. And so that guy was wanting to go beat up the actor. So they called me. I was in my trailer line producing, and they told me. So I jumped out, and the guy's coming at me, and I stopped him. And I said, "Where you going?" He said, "I'm going down there." I said, "No, you're not. You're turning around and going the other direction." He said, "No, I'm going that way." I said, "No, you're turning around and going the other direction." At that point, I was ready to knock his ass out. and then, then he goes to get his guys to come back and shoot up the set. So I had to bring in security with guns. I had to shut down the whole, all the trucks. It was all behind the scenes, and nobody knew all this was going on. But it was one of those like, yeah, we got a deal, man. We just got to solve this and keep moving because you're filming and I wanted you to keep filming. So
I know, and I had no idea any of this was going on because the filming was just going smooth.
It was.
And that's why, I always got to give props to John Duffy. I was like,
thank you, man.
Went down there, man, and represented. He flexed on these street gangs and stuff.
Yeah,
man.
well, the guy wasn't going to get through me. I knew that wasn't going to happen. But yeah, it was crazy.
On top of that, the crew, the cast and the crew, all of it. That was not. We used to brag that we got the baddest cast of people working any film in town. Everybody fought. Everybody was fighters and stuff. There were no scaredy cats on the Blood and Bone.
No, and you had a group of friends, and you still are friends with all of them. And I've gone to an event or two with you back in the day with the stunt community, and a lot of your friends who were stunt players and stunt coordinators, and that was a great group of people too. You just, it was just a bunch of great people, man.
Yeah. The stunt community, they're some of my favorite people. When it comes to hanging out. Yeah, I love actors and stuff, and I love hanging out with my acting peeps and stuff, but I always had more fun hanging out with the stunties, man.
Yeah, they for real, man. Tell me about martial arts. I remember back in the day you were into martial arts and kung fu and all that. That was a big part of who you were. What got you to that? Why did you get involved in all that? Besides obviously wanting to make action movies and martial art movies, but actually participate in doing some martial arts yourself.
Well, yeah, I never, I never competed, but like I said, we grew up in Pittsburgh. We grew up tough,
right?
So we all, and plus I was a kung fu movie fanatic. So me and my friends used to, we after the kung fu movies, we'd go out and go into my friend Nunu's backyard, and we would just beat the living crap out of each other. I took Shotokan karate, and they didn't allow us to spar. At an early age. So we're like, no, we're going to spar anyway. So we go to my friend's backyard and, we beat the crap out of each other. My father exposed me and my brother to jiu-jitsu at an early age. He was a martial artist. He studied jiu-jitsu too. And, so I grew up around the martial arts my entire life. And then later on, I met my Sifu, Lynn Hairston.
Right.
Introduced me to Tai Chi, and he came in to work on the movie. I think you might have met him.
I did. I did meet him. Great guy.
Yeah. So Sifu Glenn introduced me to Tai Chi, and I didn't know that Tai Chi was a fighting art, until he gave me a taste. And I was like, man, what y'all doing? Yoga or something?
Right. It looked like this exercise for old people over 80, just kind of moving and going like
this. Just and then one of the students said, give him a taste, and Glenn walked over and just tapped me on the shoulder like boom, and it felt like somebody just threw a wrecking ball into my chest. I was like, oh. I was like, after that, I was like, teach me.
So that's like, I don't know if you've seen it recently, that fun commercial on TV about that little kid, and he's studying on the internet all this martial arts, and his father's like making fun of him, and he says, "Oh yeah," and he touches his father in the thing, and the father falls on the ground. Right? That's exactly.
Yeah, that's what it was like. You know, it was like
Yeah,
when he
it's a
just went,
takeoff
it
on
was
that.
just like, boop. That was all. He just walked over, boop. And I was like,
Right. He hit that point, man. That's all he needed to
I
do.
was like, I had never been hit with such power. So I was
Fascinating.
like,
So
dude, you're
after
okay.
Blood and Bone, you went on to Black Salt. What did you do with that? Was that
Black Salt was just kind of like a test. I always, deep in my heart, even though I work for Hollywood, I'm a guerrilla filmmaker. I
right?
tell everybody that's my passion. That's who I am through and through. So this guy Ratner um, came to me and approached me with this comic book that he had and said, "Hey, we want to shoot a short film and maybe try to use that to pitch a feature film." And I wasn't doing anything. I was working on that. I was working on Interface at the same time. So I was like, all right, I'll take a few months to work on this. And we put it together, and it came out really cool. And I'm still kind of proud of that movie. Then, like it was on HBO for a short. I think they had HBO shorts,
Uh-huh.
and then we kind of lost contact. I you know haven't seen her from that. And then later on, I moved from that into Interface with my partner Arnold Shawn. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say. So tell us about Interface. What is it, and what was your what were you trying to accomplish, and what are accomplishing with Interface? What was that? Tell us a little bit about that.
It was wild because Arnold, he's one of the top stunt guys and fight coordinators and
Hmm.
fight choreographers in town. And he said, I want to do a fight scene and I want to kind of do a sci-fi thing, a guy, has this device on his wrist and it gives him superpower and, I was like, oh, okay, let me think about it. He said, can you direct it for me? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I sat there and thought about it. And within 15 minutes of him giving me that idea, it's almost like a wave, and I tell Arnold this all the time. It was like just a tsunami of of visions just hit me like I'm trying to think of the word. A wave of consciousness or something hit me. Uh, and next thing you know, I saw the whole world. I saw this whole universe. And something within me said, this is important. This is something that you need to do.
Hmm.
And this is the one, whether, no matter what happens. And from that point on, we've been working on that thing for over 10 years. You
Wow,
know,
that long.
yeah, it took a long time because I was doing it all by myself. Arnold put his money up, and I put my money up, and I've been putting my money up. So that's another thing about me. I don't mind. I spend my own money to create my visions. So
Well,
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
no, I want to go deeper into Interface and the Gauntlet and what you're doing now. But before I go into the details of that, I'd like to pull back and go, AI. Right now, I mean, you obviously have dived into that both on a big picture, but also practically and creative way as well. And right now that's a big debate on every level in society, in entertainment, in Hollywood, in the unions. I mean, the whole issue of AI is, everybody's dealing with it, and everybody has an opinion, whether they know what they or don't know, but they all got opinions. What is your perspective on all that? How do you see AI, both the positive or the negative, the people who are using it, the people who are doomers who think it's going to be the end of the world. What's your perspective on that big picture of AI and AGI?
Well, that actually ties back into interface,
So
because
tell us, take us there.
interface was basically the story of interface. What is a cautionary tale of letting technology take over our society, where people no longer live as human beings, they live through technology, and they live and they work basically to make enough money to disappear into virtual worlds. And an AI has taken over the world. This big, powerful AI has taken over the world, with the task of, saving the planet, making the world a better place. And the AI in my story basically said, well, I see what the problem is. And so save the world, that's what I'm here. I see what the problem is. It's you. You people are the problem. So, the AI basically just kind of wipes most of humanity out and then pockets the rest into this one zone where, billions of people live in this very confined area. And, and it's divided into, a lot of it that I conceived of in that story. I started to, see coming, in real life. Like we had Neuralink before Elon Musk. I never heard of Neuralink, but in our story, we had brain chips.
Okay.
And everybody, instead of having a smartphone, you have a brain chip, and everything your smartphone could do, you could do with inside your brain. Excuse me. They're talking about doing that right now.
Yeah, they are. Uh-huh.
So what ultimately led me, I knew about ChatGPT probably about 5 years before anybody knew what ChatGPT was. And, and I saw it coming and I knew it was inevitable. So, I approach it from a standpoint of, okay, I don't think we're going to stop this. We're not going to be able to stop this, but we can take this technology and steer it into our favor. That's my perspective. I'm a problem solver. I look at the problem, and I know that doom and gloom and all of that. I'm past doom and gloom now. I've already put the warning out about what too much technology can do. But my perspective is, like Hollywood, for example, that's my, since that's my focus. Everybody's like, the AI is going to replace us. The studios are going to use the AI to replace us. And, I've spoken at a couple of seminars, in front of a lot of producers who were yelling. They were like, yeah, they're like, ooh, I like that, And I had to warn them. I was like saying, let's not get too excited about replacing people with AI, because you can be just as easily replaced with AI, if not easier,
Very true.
So, what I tell all my artist friends, I was like, look, the whole Hollywood, the entertainment medium, it is turning into something else. It's slowly but surely turning into something else. And AI is only a part of it. It's not, it's not going to be, or we're going to generate all movies with AI just by typing in prompts and stuff. It's going to be a part of it to start with. And as it develops, it may develop into that, So what are all the people that are going to be kicked to the curb going to do with all that talent and all that ability? Well, it's got to be, people have got to start being their own studio. Groups of artists and talent need to be their own studio, because AI is more than just generative AI, where you use it to make movies and make visuals. You can use it to augment videos. You can use it to take ideas and story, flesh them out, shoot them on your iPhone. You shoot it on your iPhone, run it through AI, and you have big blockbuster looking work. But all the creativity is still there. You still shot it. You still use actors. I'm a big proponent of using actors in my work. AI can simulate actors, but it does not have the nuance, in voice and performance that real actors can do. And the latest thing that I posted was experimenting to see how well AI can handle action and fight scenes on its own. And it's pretty, in my terms as a martial arts enthusiast, it's pretty abysmal. It's,
Is that the scene that you'd use VEO and you shot with them fighting? Yeah, I watched that on your Facebook page.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. It is at the moment it is dismal, or it hasn't reached the level that's going to impress anybody yet.
Yeah.
But
So
when it will get to another level, and it will. But I think that's the question, you're having. I look at it, I say, AI to me and AGI it's good, bad, and ugly. And the good is there's all these tools like you're talking about. How do we as creators, as in the entertainment industry, but outside, how do we embrace and use this to create, to expand, to solve problems, to do all those things? That's the good. The bad, some people are going to get replaced. Yeah, that's not that good. I don't think that's good. I don't like that. But reality is that has happened with all advances in technology. So we can't stop that part of it. And then the ugly, of course, where you were mentioning earlier, is trying to steer away from where AI controls everything. And then we're just basically tools of AI. That's the ugly. And that would be for the human race. So that could happen. It's not like necessary that it will happen, but there's all those pieces. And so for us, we, the more we embrace it as creators, we use it and try and use it for the good. There'll be others. Yeah, there'll be others who will use it for the bad, but we got to do what we can do as well. So that's kind of, and I see that with you doing it is, being a creator, you're creating all this content, taking advantage of the technology and creating stories and trying to so that's kind of what I see you doing. And I think that's something that people can learn from.
Yeah, that's eventually I'm gonna, start doing some tutorials. And the thing is the technology keeps advancing so fast.
Yeah.
I just spent a month doing my last episode of The Gauntlet. And by the time I got finished, everything that I labored over on that episode was solved with the next update. And it was like, oh man, all this work I did is now obsolete, But the thing is that, and I tell people this a lot of people said, oh man, if the AI is doing all the work for you, in a sense it is, in a sense it isn't. But these are people that say are people that work on movies, in terms of like somebody that produces and directs, and particularly, a guerrilla filmmaker like myself. It's a tool that, I can use that's going to save me money because I'm coming out of my own pocket to do it. Plus, I write it. It's coming out of my mind and my soul. The stories that I write. The AI isn't coming up with the stories. It's not coming up with the actors. It's not coming up with anything. It's like basically I am directing an animation crew. And I don't even call what I do filmmaking. It's not filmmaking. I think it's a lot closer to animation. And then I act in it. I do the voices because I can hire actors, myself and and another actor friend, Sophie Norman. We've been working on Interface since the very beginning of Interface, so she's played the same character. So
one of the things as I've been experimenting and learning and trying to understand it better, I found pretty early on, and I asked, like you were saying about like ChatGPT, if you ask it a prompt, it gives you an answer. But my first response, like yourself, because I question everything, when it gave me the answer, I questioned the answer. And then it comes back on, I would say, well, yeah, but what about the opposite? Because this doesn't sound right. And then I go, oh, yeah, you made a good point here. It could be the opposite. I'm like, so the answers it gives you isn't necessarily the right answers. It's just answers. And then you got to challenge those answers because it isn't infallible. It's telling you stuff. It's been programmed by humans. It has its own programming and it has this perspective, but it could be wrong and it might be wrong. And if you just accept it, then you're just being a follower of AI as opposed to using it. And so when I started questioning it all the time, I said, how many people actually ever question the answer? And they say, well, only 10%. 90% of the people just accept the first answer. And I was like, that's the problem. That's the problem.
That's the way people have been, that's the way, people have been conditioned.
Correct.
They have been conditioned to, follow the, do what they're told, do what they're saying. Oh, the AI is smart and the AI says this, so it must be true.
Exactly.
And you always have to question, you got to question AI in particular, the language models, because they will tell you something, it will tell you something completely wrong with complete confidence. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
it'll put stuff in that it grabs somewhere. Like I had to do something about my bio and my experience for a promotional thing, and everything. A lot of it was great. And then in one, they talk about all my experience as a jiu-jitsu trainer. It's like, I've never been a jiu-jitsu trainer. I've never even studied jiu-jitsu. Where the hell did they grab that from? So, but that was just a weird example of how wrong it can be. And there's even worse ones, but that's the thing. I think we got to be as creators and as thinkers, we have to use it and not let it use us, and challenge it and challenge it and challenge it and keep going after what our objectives are. What kind of lessons would you offer? You said you spoke on panels, Ben. What kind of lessons would you share or advice to writers, to directors, to actors, now that this is taking our industry by storm? What do they need to do to stay abreast, to stay ahead, to not, give up or lose in the game?
Well, the first thing is you have to embrace it as a tool and not a crutch. It's just another thing in your, in your workflow of whatever it is that you're trying to do, whatever it is you're using it for. It's just a tool. It's another voice and stuff. And and it's good with technical things. Most of the time it's pretty good with technical things. But when it comes to life advice and things like that, never, use your AI for that. For filmmakers, you have to start approaching it from the standpoint of being independent, people within the community. How can I continue working, doing what I love to do when the entire system now doesn't need me anymore? It has to be a situation of what can I do to continue working? How can I continue to act? How can I, continue to do fight choreography? How can I tell my stories? How can I continue to write? You use the AI to handle the stuff that you're not good at. Like I said, I tell them, I said, don't, let the studios replace you with AI. Replace the studios with AI. So which means, like I'm going to shoot myself. I'm going to shoot my stories. I'll shoot it with my iPhone camera if I want. Maybe I'll prompt it. You could use it as much or as little as you need. But then after you get it done, it's like, okay, what do I do with it now? And it's like, okay, now you have AI agents. They can say, well, I can set up an entire marketing plan and scheme and execute it. And it will post your videos, automatically, all month long, so you can, so you don't have to worry about doing that. You can market what you create using the AI. And this is something, excuse me, let's go. Sorry about that. I got a little bit of heartburn. But it's something that, the studios do, they got marketing departments and they have you know, groups to go out and do, you know, everything, you know, that you need to market and sell their what they're calling content. I don't even call it movies and TV anymore. So you have AI agents that you can employ to do all the stuff that the studios do for you, or you can focus on creating, you know, and you can, if you don't, you can make movies and don't have AI do anything. You make them the way you always wanted to make it. You go out and shoot, you cast, and you know, and shoot it the traditional way. Then after you got it done, now you have this movie. What do you do with it? You know, studios don't want it, or whatever. You know, then you put your AI on it.
You know, and you also, we look back and say, you know, everybody who knows everything doesn't know everything. And I look back in the last period of time. Remember when 3D was going to be the rage and everybody was making 3D movies, and all of a sudden, and then it didn't happen because nobody wanted to see 3D movies. It was like, nah, man, that's just, it's not. Yeah, 1 is fine, 2 is fine. But to see everyone in 3D, nah, ain't interested. So that went away. And then the VR was going to be the big thing. And we're all going to walk around with VR glasses.
Big.
And that kind of disappeared because people rejected it. People said, nah, it's kind of cute for a moment. Yeah, it's a little bit of a game to play with for a little bit, but then it's over and it's gone. So the same with AI, there's things there that, you know, they're going to make movies using AI and people may go see them. And then people may say, I don't feel it. You know, I don't think this is what I want to see. Because at the end of the day, what makes us unique is this human connection, the human story, our individual lives that we live. That's why we go to see movies and entertainment, is to participate in that human experience, not an artificial experience, not a robot experience, but a human experience. So, you know, we'll see how it develops in life. But you're right. I mean, your advice to people is to, you know, take hold of it, be creators, and take control of your life. You know, don't let them control you, but find a way to keep implementing, you know, your journey, your passion, what you want to create, and go down that path.
Yeah, and I tell you know, the people in the AI community, or if you want to see the AI community, go to LinkedIn. LinkedIn is you know,
Is that it? That's the community.
Yeah, LinkedIn is just like, wahoo! You know, I go to other states and all the you know, all my filmmakers in the film community is like, nobody knows. You go to LinkedIn, they're like, it's a celebration. You know, because there are business people there. But you know, I tell you know, the people in the filmmaking, I mean, in the AI community, I was like, look, pretty soon it's going to get to the point where the novelty wears off. But wow, this was made by AI. You know, wow, AI did all that. That's going to like, okay.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be back down to what always drew people to entertainment. What was the story? Was the story good? Was the acting good? You know, was there something that connected, that I could connect with? And you know, to be fair to AI, I've seen some AI shorts that were absolutely brilliant. You know, there's some artists out there, AI artists, that are doing truly brilliant work and telling wonderful stories. And you know that, and that's my thing. You know, I want to watch. You know, I judge it by, if I'm watching this, you know, am I caught up in, wow, that's great for AI, or am I just caught up in a story? You know, and then there's other creators that are just leaning, and AI is weird, and they just lean into it and they create art with it. There's this one female AI creator, and she's like, I call her the Salvador Dali of AI, because she makes these videos and they're so creative and beautiful, and you know, and just strange, you know. So I don't buy, you know, when people say, oh, it's the death of creativity. I don't buy that. I don't think you could kill creativity. Creativity, a creative person can create with anything they put in front of you. You know, whether you're scratching a carving with rocks on a cave, or somebody puts a computer with AI in front of, if you are truly creative, you can create with it. It's not going to be there.
And you know, because there's a lot of movies made. Like if you watch Netflix, you go on Netflix, those are human-made movies. There's hundreds of them, and none of them are any good, or most of them are not that good. So nobody even wants to watch those. It's just content, right? So humans can create bad things too. Whether you're an artist, I just read a thing. This woman was saying, you know, hundreds of years ago, the Mona Lisa, people still go to see the Mona Lisa, pay money, wait in line to see the actual one. Well, you can make copies of it and look at the copy, but nobody wants to see the copy of it. They want to go see the original, right? So artists and the creation of artists, you know, has been with us since the you know, beginning of mankind, and hopefully it'll continue. So I agree with you, man. Any takeaways, any last comments as we wrap this up? And I just, you know, once again, I'm glad to see all the stuff you're doing with your creativity and how you're embracing all this. But any last comments and takeaways for the audience?
One of the things that, you know, I like to say, you know, to people that are just, you know, completely incensed, you know, against AI is that it might be, look at this as perhaps a blessing in disguise, because, you know, what I think and what I'm hoping it does is creates a renaissance of authenticity. You know, and I know most of the kids that are complaining about AI art, you know, they're digital artists. They're working with Photoshop and Illustrator and all of that. And, you know, and when I came up, you know, that was the devil, you know. And I was like, you know what? Maybe get from in front of the screen. Get away from the screen. Pick up the brush and the canvas and the paint, you know, start painting. Don't go to the websites, go to the gallery.
Right.
Don't listen to the AI music, go to live concerts and stuff, you know, get the authenticity, because as long as you're looking at a screen, you're always looking at AI, whether it's AI generated or not. The fact that something shows up in front of your screen is because of AI. Some AI algorithm put it in front of your face, and that's how you make it. So I'm hoping that, you know, this creates a renaissance of authenticity, that, you know, people go back to, you know, go analog, you know, go back to the, you know, how to, you're like, people are using vinyl now.
Yeah, flip phones. Back to flip phones.
Go back to flip phones and quit staring at this, you know, at your screen, you know, that's lying to you constantly. The screen is always lying, you know. Get out there and be authentic, you know. Don't go through some app to find a date. Go out and meet somebody, meet a girl, meet a guy, you know, allow it and learn how to talk. Don't text so much anymore. Talk.
You know, I was walking in the park the other day, and I saw two young kids in their 20s maybe, and they're out there and they had those VR glasses, and they're standing in the grass going like this, moving their hands forward in this, and I'm like, what a bunch of silliness, man. You know, it's like, what are you accomplishing? You know, why are you even out here in the park when you could do that at home, for one? And you're not even in the park. You're not even paying attention to the park. You're in this imaginary world. I don't know. I'm not impressed, but you know, I guess some people are, man. But I agree with you. You know, so get into the real world, experience the real world, experience art, music, all those things that are real. Maybe that rebirth is coming. So we'll see, Ben.
I'm hoping. You know,
true. Well, thank you, man. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for sharing all this. And I look forward to continuing the creative journey with you, man.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. And thanks for protecting me on Blood and Bone. You know, I had no idea, man.
It ain't over. We want the return of Blood and Bone, man. I'm putting it out there. I'm putting it out there.
Blood and Bone 2.
Blood and Bone 2. There you go, man. All right. I'm going to put you in the green room and I'm going to finish up the show. All right. Thank you, brother.
All righty, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, everybody, I hope today's show with Ben Ramsey inspired you to live creatively and pursue your passions and pursue your dreams like he has from his journey from Pittsburgh to all the way to Hollywood to today, using AI and just being a creator, being somebody who's authentic and real. So I hope it inspires you. And if you haven't seen the previous 93 podcast with some of my amazing courageous friends sharing their powerful stories, overcoming all odds, you can watch them on my YouTube Live Courageously channel or my live-courageously.com channel. So until we meet again, join me at Sunday at 6 p.m. to watch this, and Wednesday again repeated at 6 p.m. And I hope you live courageously.